The moon hung low and heavy in the sky, casting a pale light over the fields, making everything look almost otherworldly. It was the kind of night when shadows danced, and the air felt thick with expectancy. A group of marauders crept through the darkness, hearts pounding quietly in anticipation. Sneaking past the old farmhouse, they whispered to each other, eyes flicking to the distant barn. It was just an old, weather-beaten structure, silent under the stars. But they had heard the rumors, whispers of treasure hidden deep within its rotting walls. They moved swiftly, slipping silently toward the barn, little knowing that it was far more than it appeared. As they approached, a shiver ran down one marauder's spine. He whispered, glancing back at the farmhouse, where a thin curl of smoke spiraled up from the chimney. Another hissed, pulling him along. They edged closer to the building, its old wooden boards creaking in the night, an uneasy welcome inviting their curiosity. They pushed open the heavy door, and it moaned low, a sound that echoed like a warning. Inside, the air was thick with dust and secrets, each particle glinting in the moonlight that trickled through gaps in the walls. They stepped cautiously, boots crunching on the scattered hay. The barn was cluttered, full of rusty tools, old machinery, remnants of a life of forgotten labor. But in the darkness at the far end, something glinted, catching their eyes. "Over there," one of them breathed, pointing, adrenaline flooding through his veins. They crept toward whatever had drawn their attention, all thoughts of treasure swirling in their minds like a wild whirlwind. The closer they got, the less certain they felt, a primal fear creeping in. And then they saw it. A door embedded into the wall, half hidden behind stacks of old barrels. The wood was worn, but it wasn't just any door. It looked out of place, almost too solid amidst the decay surrounding it. Another murmured, hesitation battling with the thrill of the unknown. "Are you kidding?" The bravest one shoved against the door. To their surprise, it creaked open, revealing a long, narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The air was cooler, and a strange scent wafted up, earthy and sweet, tinged with something metallic. Cautiously they descended, their hearts racing. Each step down the creaking wood shot a wave of suspense through their bodies. The passage was dim, the only light coming from their phones. What awaited them below felt like the thrum of untold stories, the echoes of voices gone silent. At the bottom, they found a small room lined with shelves. The flickering light revealed jars filled with strange contents, herbs, odd liquids, and what appeared to be old scrolls. But it wasn't just the bizarre items that struck them. It was the collection of photographs, frames hanging crookedly on the walls. Each picture showed the same farmer with a stern face, standing rigidly beside strange contraptions and symbols they didn't understand. The marauders' blood ran cold as they flipped the pages of one scroll, filled with symbols that looked far older than their simple criminal lives. Someone asked, their voice trembling, grounded in disbelief. It's like some kind of alchemy," another replied, eyes wide, reality slipping through their fingers like grains of sand. They had come searching for riches, but what they found felt more like the tip of an iceberg submerged in dark waters. Suddenly, a faint sound floated down from above, the unmistakable creak of footsteps. The marauders froze, anxiety hitching their breath. Someone was coming. They darted behind shelves, each heartbeat an ominous drumbeat matching the tension thickening around them. The door swung open with a sudden crash, and there stood the farmer, his silhouette sharp against the dim light. His eyes glinted with a curious mix of caution and authority. He called, voice gravelly, cutting through the silence like a knife. The marauders held their breath, the thrill of burglary now turned to a primal fear, desperation to escape overloading their senses. The farmer stepped closer, his gaze sweeping the room, missing them only by inches. He shouted, and the air turned electric with tension. In that heartbeat, the marauders felt the weight of their choices. They were here for riches, for an easy score, but this was no ordinary farmer. He was a guardian of secrets, a keeper of ancient knowledge that they couldn't begin to comprehend. One of them, undone by panic, stepped out into the open. We didn't mean any harm," he stammered, voice cracking. "We just thought." The farmer's expression shifted, something unreadable crossing his face. For a moment silence enveloped them, thick and suffocating. Then he chuckled softly, a sound rich with irony. "Valuable, perhaps." His gaze held theirs, stripping them bare, revealing the foolishness of their ambitions. The others hesitated, slowly stepping out from hiding. The chill of realization froze their bravado. One demanded, needing to understand. The farmer took a step forward, confidence radiating from him. "They're not just symbols." His voice dripped with authority, a teacher laying bare the mysteries he dedicated his life to. He looked at each of them as if reading the very fibers of their souls. The Marauders exchanged glances. The thrill of the unknown had woven its spell, daring and dangerous, but they no longer felt like hunters. They were captive, ensnared by a deeper truth. Someone finally dared to ask, uncertainty flickering like a candle. The farmer sighed, his demeanor softening slightly. "Because people are greedy. They see power and forget the cost." His eyes sparkled with something deeper, a sorrow that ran like a river below the surface. One marauder felt a pang of regret, the weight of wasted potential heavy on his shoulders. "We didn't know. That's what drives most to seek treasure," the farmer replied, his gaze penetrating. "But true treasure, it lies in understanding rather than possession." They stood in silence, the darkness pressing in around them until one of them broke away from the group. "What if we were willing to change?" The farmer's lips curled up in a slight smile, one that hinted at possibilities. A moment stretched, filled with hope and the allure of redemption. "But it won't be easy." They exchanged glances, fear shifting into determination. Each had seen the potential for change in the dim recesses of their hearts, like a flickering fire waiting to be fanned into flame. One of them whispered, as if afraid to say it aloud. "Only if you're willing to hope, to work, and to sacrifice," the farmer replied, his gaze steady, unyielding. After a long pause, the Marauders looked at each other, judgment mixing with a longing that felt almost foreign. Slowly, they stepped closer to the farmer, a pact forming under the weight of possibility hanging in the air. It felt as if something profound was shifting within them. "Tell us what to do," one finally said, more confidently than before. The old barn, once a hollow shell housing secrets of the past, was now filled with a promise of transformation. Night deepened around them, but the shadows that had once seemed so foreboding were now alive with potential. The Marauders found themselves not just changed by the events of that night, but on the cusp of embarking on a journey far richer than any treasure they had once sought. As the dawn began to break, they stood together inside that forgotten barn, willing to brave the deeper dark to find the light just beyond. They had come seeking riches, but it was knowledge they had found instead, and in that they discovered the real treasure, the power to reclaim their lives. In a way, the farmer hadn't just guarded secrets. He had offered them a choice, a path toward something extraordinary, something that beckoned from behind the closed door of their former selves. They had stepped into a mystery that would shape their lives, transforming the shadows into layers of light, illuminating their journey to a future they never thought possible. The night was thick with silence, save for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Stars stretched across the sky like a tapestry woven from dreams and secrets. It was on this very night that a group of marauders crept through the dark, their hearts pounding with a mix of excitement and fear, driven by whispers of an extraordinary treasure hidden in an old barn. One whispered, eyeing the dilapidated structure standing against the night sky. "Yeah, it's just a barn," another responded, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. "But legend has it." As they huddled together, the breeze carried the scent of hay and earth, sharpening their senses. They moved deeper into the shadows, slipping silently past the farmhouse, their target mere feet away. Each thick wooden beam of the barn loomed larger, as if warning them of the danger they were about to embrace. "Just stick to the plan," the self-proclaimed leader urged, his voice barely above a whisper. They nodded, a silent pact binding them in this reckless adventure. Pushing against the heavy barn doors, they were met with creaks and groans, the sound echoing like a plea from the past. The air inside was stale but alive with the essence of forgotten tales. Shadows flickered as their flashlights danced across old farming tools, dust motes swirling like tiny stars caught in a cosmic whirl. "Look at this stuff," one marauder breathed, inspecting a rusted plow. But time held on tightly to its secrets, and the barn had plenty to give. At the far end, partially hidden beneath a tattered tarp, something shimmered under the moonlight. a curious gleam that raised the hairs on their arms a beacon, calling them closer. Someone yelled, excitement rising, the thrill of discovery igniting a fire inside them. They rushed forward, pulling back the tarp to reveal, not gold or jewels, but an old, sturdy door tucked into the wall, far too solid to match the rest of the barn's decay. Another muttered, uncertainty creeping in. "Who cares? Let's see what's behind it," the leader urged, pushing against the door. It creaked open slowly, revealing a staircase spiraling down into darkness. The air was cooler than outside, tinged with damp earth and mystery. With hearts pounding, they descended, one step at a time. The wooden staircase huffed and sighed beneath their weight. Each creak echoed like a siren call, pulling them deeper into the unknown. When they reached the bottom, a small room unfolded before them, walls lined with shelves filled with jars containing strange substances. Dried herbs, mysterious liquids, and what looked like bones, all preserved in time. But it wasn't the macabre sight that held their attention. It was a series of photographs hanging crookedly on the walls. The same face appeared in each one, the farmer, his features rugged and weathered, eyes piercing through the years as if watching over something significant. In the photos, he stood next to enigmatic symbols that looked ancient, arcane. "What?" one marauder asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Looks like some weird science project," came a hesitantly brave response. But this wasn't just a random collection of oddities. As they gathered closer to examine the scrolls lying on a table, something shifted in the air, a weight pressing down on their chests. The symbols were intricate, spiraling into patterns that felt alive, pulsating with a sense of purpose. Each line told a story, a language they could feel but not understand. "What if?" someone breathed, eyes widening with both dread and fascination. "Real. Like magic or something. People talk about stuff like this, old practices, ancient knowledge," he explained, the thrill of curiosity still alive within him. "We could," before he could finish, a sudden creak above sent a shockwave through them. Heavy footsteps echoed in the barn above. They froze, the excitement draining, replaced by a rush of terror. A murmur rippled through the group. The leader hissed, adrenaline erupting within them. They scrambled behind the shelves, hearts racing, breath shallow. As the door swung open, it revealed the farmer himself, aged hands gripping the door frame, eyes narrowing to slits. His presence was formidable. The air thickened as he stepped into the room, scanning the contents around him. He growled, voice like gravel, deeply rooted with authority. The marauders held their breath. Time seemed to pause, the weight of his gaze hanging heavy in the musty air. One marauder edged out, emboldened by a desperate need for survival. We didn't mean any harm." The farmer replied, a hint of amusement curling his lips, but his eyes remained sharp, unyielding. "Do you think treasure is just gold and jewels?" The marauders exchanged glances, the thrill of their adventure morphing into uneasy realization. One of them asked, voice trembling. The farmer stepped closer, penetrating their very souls with his gaze. "This isn't just a barn. It's a vault of knowledge, ancient practices lost to time. The legends." Another whispered, trapped between fear and curiosity. "Legends are born from truth," the farmer said, his words dropping like stones in a still pond, creating ripples that disturbed the very essence of their existence. "And with such knowledge comes a price. Not many can handle it." The marauders tensed, fear coiling tightly in their chests. They had come seeking treasure but found themselves in the presence of something much greater, something that sparked both fear and potential. One of them asked, almost pleading. The farmer studied them, recognition flickering behind his eyes. "You've crossed a threshold tonight. A choice lies before you. Run and stay prisoners of your own ignorance." The marauders hesitated, a whirlwind of thoughts swirling within them. They had been searching for an escape, a way to seize life in all its glory. But something deeper was calling to them now, a chance for redemption writ large against the backdrop of their reckless ambitions. The leader finally asked, his bravado wavering. "Because trust is forged in the fire of truth," the farmer replied, voice steady and strong. They could feel it in the room, the weight of possibility mingling with the echoes of unwritten destinies. They acknowledged the risk, the leap into the abyss of the unknown, and what it meant to embrace a path they never thought to tread. Another marauder asked, his brow furrowing with suspicion. The farmer chuckled softly, a glimmer of warmth breaking through the tension. The catch is that knowledge demands responsibility. It's not just about power, it's about understanding its consequences. With a collective breath, they stepped closer, curiosity softening their fear. "We're willing to learn," the leader said, voice steadying with resolve. It was a turning point, a step toward something profound. "Good," the farmer nodded, satisfaction playing at the corners of his mouth. "Then let's begin. This place holds more than you might realize." They nodded, hearts pounding with anticipation. Together they moved deeper into the hidden corners of the barn, the farmer leading the way, weaving tales of ancient practices, forgotten traditions, and powerful symbols. Hours slipped away as they delved into knowledge that shimmered like hidden treasure beneath the surface, challenging their understanding of the world. The farmer shared stories that ignited their minds, tales of balance and chaos, of nature and its rhythms, the magic of the earth they had long ignored. Underneath it all, a bond began to form, not just between the marauders and the farmer, but among the marauders themselves. They were no longer just a group of thieves hungry for fortune. They were seekers of truth, united by the power of transformation. As dawn broke, spilling golden light through the barn, they found themselves profoundly changed. The farmer seemed less like a guardian of secrets and more like a guide helping them reshape their identities. They were learning more than just history. They were discovering their own potential, their own power. The old barn that had once felt like a time capsule filled with dusty relics transformed into a sanctuary of wisdom, a beacon in a world often shrouded in darkness. The marauders didn't just find a treasure, they found purpose. One of them asked, stepping into the light, heart still racing with the thrill of awakening. "You'll shape your own destinies," the farmer replied, eyes shining. "The journey is yours to navigate." They looked at each other, the weight of his words settling in. This night had irrevocably changed them, lighting a path toward a future they could now envision. Each of them carried within the seeds of transformation, ready to grow into something much greater. As they ascended back into the barn, the memories of their reckless intentions lingered, a reminder of who they had once been. But now they stood together, united by purpose, elevated by knowledge, ready to embrace the complexities of life. In the old barn shrouded in shadows, they had forged a new chapter, not just for themselves but for anyone wishing to escape the clutches of their own ignorance. In that sacred space, beneath the watchful gaze of the farmer, they understood it fully. The real treasure lay not in what was hidden but in the journey taken, the lessons learned, and the bonds forged along the way. This was a night they would remember forever, the beginning of many stories yet to unfold, echoes of courage reverberating through time. The barn had indeed held secrets, but the secrets had transformed them into something extraordinary. The night was thick with stillness, the kind of quiet that hangs heavy in the air, pregnant with anticipation. Under the glow of a sliver of moonlight, 5 figures skulked through the dense underbrush, eyes fixed on a weathered barn sitting quietly in the distance. It seemed ordinary enough, just another rustic structure on the edge of a sprawling field. But to the marauders it was rumored to be a treasure trove filled with riches beyond their wildest dreams. One whispered, fidgeting nervously at the edge of the group. "Stop second-guessing," shot back the leader, his voice laced with bravado. "We've come this far." With hearts pounding from equal parts fear and adrenaline, they stepped closer, the crunch of dry leaves beneath their feet echoing in the quiet night. The barn loomed larger as they approached, its weather-beaten wood and rusty nails telling stories of a time long past. "Maybe it's just old junk," someone muttered, eyes darting back to the farmhouse, its windows dark and uninviting. "Old junk worth checking out," the leader replied, grinning in the darkness, fueled by the hyped-up thrill of anticipation. The air felt electric as they reached the massive doors of the barn, their breaths hitching as they prepared to break the silence. With a quick shove, the doors creaked open, releasing a gust of stale air that carried the scent of hay and dust. The light from their flashlights flickered across a room cluttered with forgotten tools, all seemingly harmless in the quiet shadows. But somewhere in the depths of this old barn lay secrets waiting to be uncovered. "Look at this place," one marauder exclaimed, awe dripping from his voice as he swept his flashlight over a line of abandoned equipment. But their excitement was short-lived. The barn's far wall drew their eyes towards a dark outline, a door, slightly ajar, that seemed out of place amid the disarray. It whispered to them, luring them closer with a promise of mystery and adventure. "It must be where the farmer keeps the good stuff," the leader smirked, his bravado intensifying. As they approached, the heavy wooden door creaked open wider with just a gentle push, revealing a staircase spiraling down into darkness, each step holding the weight of untold stories and unmade choices. The marauders glanced at each other, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. One asked, voice quivering, "Are you scared?" "You'll thank me when we find something incredible," the leader shot back, his fear masked by bravado. With a resigned nod, they stepped onto the staircase, the wood groaning under their weight. Each step pulled them deeper into the unknown, a place that felt charged with history, thick with the dust of dreams long forgotten. As they reached the bottom, the air became cool, almost electric, wrapping around them like an embrace of secrets and whispers. A small chamber revealed itself, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb hanging from a frayed wire. It was lined with shelves full of odd jars, exotic herbs, and strange liquids shimmering mysteriously. But it wasn't the strange contents that captured their attention. It was the photographs lining the walls. Each one depicted an older man, the farmer, his stern face staring back at them, surrounded by bizarre symbols and odd contraptions. Someone asked, their voice barely above a whisper. "Looks like some kind of old workshop," the leader replied, eyes scanning the clutter. Maybe he was a hoarder, but as they moved deeper into the room, a shiver ran up their spines. This was no ordinary barn or workshop. The atmosphere felt charged, every object a conduit of something deep and ancient, buzzing just beneath the surface. One whispered nervously, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Relax," the leader said, not ready to back down. He grabbed a scroll from a nearby shelf, its edges frail and crumbling, and began to unfurl it. The symbols spiraled and intertwined, presenting a strange language that both captivated and terrified him. Another marveled, leaning closer. "No way, this is all nonsense," came the dismissive reply, but his facade was weakening. Curiosity ignited their instincts, gnawing at the edges of caution. They weren't just thieves anymore, they were explorers in a realm of shadows and secrets, searching for something that felt larger than themselves. Someone pondered, voice tinged with fear. "What farmer?" "I don't see anyone," the leader huffed, waving his flashlight around. But even he could feel it, the prickle of being watched, the underlying tension tightening around them like a noose. Suddenly, a faint sound echoed above, a creaking floorboard followed by voices drifting down. Panic surged through the group as they scrambled to hide, shoving behind an array of jars and dusty shelves. The room darkened, shadows stretching long as the footsteps drew nearer. The door swung open, and in stepped the farmer himself, tall, imposing, and eerily calm. His weathered skin seemed to glow in the dim light, eyes flickering with an intensity that suggested he held more than mere secrets in this hidden sanctuary. He called, voice a rumble against the stillness. The marauders held their breath, hearts racing in their chests, impossibly loud in the silence. Time stretched as the farmer scanned the room, eyes narrowing as if he could sense their presence. He commanded, an air of authority emanating that made their very bones tremble. In a moment of panic, the leader stepped out from the shadows. "We didn't mean to intrude, we were just—" The farmer's gaze held steady, studying the group with an unsettling calm. "Valuable." The air around them crackled with uncertainty as he closed the gap, stepping into the flickering glow of the light bulb. "You're fascinated by the old tales, aren't you?" Each marauder exchanged glances, caught between fear and intrigue. The legends of hidden treasures and ancient knowledge had whispered to them like sirens calling out from the depths. "But it's not just old wives' tales," the farmer continued, his voice low and mesmerizing. "Wield." One of the marauders stammered, the bravado slipping away like water through their fingers. The farmer replied, a slight smirk dancing on his lips as he stepped closer. "This is no treasure trove of gold and silver. This is wisdom, ancient practices that can heal or harm." Another asked, their voice shaking. "Many have come seeking riches, reckless in their pursuit," the farmer said, his gaze unwavering. "Some became powerful but lost their way. They unleashed forces they could not understand, wreaking havoc far beyond their imagination. A chill settled over the Marauders as the weight of his words sank in. They hadn't come to seek wisdom, they had come for fortune, and now they faced the shadows of their ambition. "What if we would learn?" the leader asked, desperation and vulnerability creeping into his voice. The farmer paused, taking a long moment to study them. Change is a path fraught with challenges. You stand at a crossroads, a choice that could steer your future. The Marauders shifted, nervous glances passing among them. Was this a trap? Were they foolish to entertain such a dangerous idea? "Wisdom requires sacrifice," the farmer continued, his voice deepening. "It's only for those willing to pay the price." They hesitated, the enormity of the decision pressing down like a heavy weight. Every rebellious dream they'd ever chased hung in the balance, waiting for their response. One bravely prompted. The farmer's eyes sparkled with wisdom. "Then you will begin a journey toward understanding. You will learn not just about the power you seek, but also the discipline it demands." With a deep breath, the leader stepped forward. "We'll stay." A smile almost broke across the farmer's face, approval flickering momentarily before he turned his back to lead them deeper into the darkness. "Very well." As they followed him, a new thread of courage intertwined with their fear. The barn that had once felt like a looming prison transformed into a sanctuary of learning. Behind every jar, behind every scroll lay layers of history and wisdom waiting to be unveiled. The hours turned into days, and within that hidden world, the Marauders found purpose. The farmer guided them through ancient practices, healing herbs, natural remedies, and the delicate dance of energies that surrounds us all. They learned that their choices shaped not just their lives, but the very fabric of reality itself. In the end, it wasn't just treasure they unearthed, but the threads of connection between themselves and the world around them. They worked tirelessly, transformed by newfound knowledge, their reckless thirst for wealth replaced by a desire to create, heal, and understand. At night, stories were shared like gifts, each word pressing a piece of the past into the present. The glow of camaraderie grew brighter, illuminating the murky paths that had once clouded their thoughts. With every lesson learned, with every truth confronted, they reclaimed pieces of themselves lost in the shadows of greed. Days turned into weeks, and the Marauders were no longer just a band of thieves. They were custodians of knowledge, protectors of a wisdom they came to understand. The barn became a home, a place of healing and growth, a testament to their journey and the secrets that once haunted it. The old farmer stood as a guardian of this transformation, his secrets not just lessons in power, but doorways to rebirth. He had shown them that true treasure wasn't found hidden beneath the surface, but was born from the courage to face their pasts and embrace the power of knowledge. Under that once hushed roof, they had forged something extraordinary, a bond more valuable than gold, a promise sparkling brightly in the night. Together, they stepped into their futures, no longer haunted by shadows but bright with possibility. The barn, once merely a facade, had revealed its secrets and turned Marauders into storytellers, seekers, and stewards of a newfound legacy. The moon hung low and full, casting a ghostly glow across the desolate landscape. Beneath its silver light, a group of Marauders crept along the edge of a worn dirt path, their hearts racing with the thrill of anticipation and danger. They had heard whispers in the nearby taverns about a farmer who guarded a hidden treasure, one that lay within a barn tucked away at the edge of his sprawling fields. "This is it," the leader whispered, pointing ahead. They all squinted into the distance, where the outline of the old barn loomed against the night sky, weathered and worn but still standing strong. "Looks like a dump," scoffed one of the Marauders, skepticism dripping from his voice. The leader retorted, his confidence unwavering, fueled by the stories he had fed on for weeks. He had seen the hunger in his companion's eyes, had felt it himself. "They say the farmers kept a fortune hidden away for years." The group exchanged nervous glances, but the allure of fortune overrode their doubt. As they approached, the barn appeared even more looming, its wooden slats groaning softly in the wind, an eerie welcome to those bold enough to enter. "Stay quiet and stick together," the leader instructed, pushing open the heavy barn doors that squeaked like old hinges. announcing their unwanted arrival. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the scent of hay a far cry from the riches they'd envisioned. Flashlights flickered through the dimness, illuminating a haphazard mess of tools, old farming equipment, and forgotten memories. Cobwebs hung in the corners like the remnants of abandoned dreams. One whispered, scanning the dimly lit space as doubt seeped into their minds. The leader frowned, unwilling to let their spirits sag. Somewhere in here is what we're looking for. As they began to sift through the debris, two of the marauders stumbled upon an object that made their hearts leap, a rusty old chest, half buried beneath an assortment of old sacks and crates. One exclaimed, kneeling down to brush away the dust. Together they pulled the chest out, its metal clasp stubborn but finally yielding to their determination. With bated breath they swung it open, only to find it filled with faded letters and everyday trinkets, no gold, no treasures. As disappointment flooded their hearts, a low laugh echoed from behind them. They turned, faces pale, to find the farmer standing in the doorway, arms crossed, a knowing smile playing on his lips. He asked, voice gravelly but not unkind. We were just looking for something," the leader stammered, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. They felt like children caught stealing from the cookie jar. The farmer questioned, stepping forward. "We didn't mean any harm," another marauder blurted, desperation tinging his words. The farm grew silent, the kind of thick silence that pulled at the seams of tension hanging in the air. The farmer's eyes narrowed, appearing to weigh their intentions, searching for the truth hidden in their anxious faces. "You came for treasure, huh? What you seek is not what you think," he said, amusement dancing in his voice, but his gaze remained steel. They exchanged uneasy glances, uncertainty coursing through them. The leader challenged, trying to reclaim his earlier bravado. The farmer chuckled softly, a knowing sound. "This isn't just a barn. This is a place where history breathes, where knowledge lies buried beneath the dust of time." Someone whispered, the weight of the words settling around them like a cold fog. The farmer gestured toward the cluttered shelves, filled with jars of herbs and ingredients that looked both ordinary and enchanting. "What you see here is the essence of life. These aren't mere trinkets, they hold power." One of the marauders stepped forward, curiosity igniting in his eyes. "What do you mean?" The farmer's expression shifted to one of caution. "The knowledge stored here can heal or harm. People tend to forget that every action has a reaction." Chill crept down their spines. They had come seeking adrenaline and wealth, but now stood confronting something much deeper, something that churned within them, an acknowledgement of their own desires and weaknesses. Another marauder snapped, his voice laced with skepticism. "Because seeking the truth is the only way to truly know oneself," the farmer replied, voice unwavering. "Everyone hides something deep within them." They were quiet, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. The marauders shifted anxiously, rethinking their motivations for being there. "So," the leader finally asked, uncertainty bubbling to the surface. "Either turn around now and forget what you've seen," the farmer said, his eyes narrowing, "or choose to stay and learn." A shiver ran through the group, but under the fear lay a flicker of intrigue. They had come to steal, but perhaps they could leave with more than just riches. One asked, his voice steadier now, hope creeping in. The farmer's face softened slightly. "It begins with an understanding of the herbs you see. Each holds a story, a remedy, a warning." They gathered closer. Their initial apprehension turned to determination as he began to explain the properties of the herbs lining the shelves. Each ingredient was a fragment of a larger tapestry, a web of wisdom waiting to be acknowledged. The hours passed in a swirl of discoveries. They learned to make potions, remedies for ailments, and salves to heal wounds. With each concoction, their understanding deepened, attaching meanings to the ingredients they worked with. The barn transformed from a mundane hideaway into an alchemical sanctuary. However, it wasn't without its challenges. As they prepared each potion, they faced failures that tested their resolve. Some mixtures bubbled over, others failed to hold their properties. Each setback sparked frustration, but with the farmer's guidance, they began to see these as lessons, opportunities to learn. "Every failure brings you closer to understanding what doesn't work," the farmer said one evening as they sat around a low table, illuminated by flickering candles. It's the same in life. Days bled into weeks. The Marauders, once lost in their ambition for wealth, found themselves coming together, knitting bonds of camaraderie as they explored the complexities of their own stories. They shared personal struggles, reframing their understanding of treasure from material wealth to personal growth and connection. In between lessons, they would share tales of their past, each marauder revealing parts of their life that had been hidden under layers of bravado and defiance. They confronted fears, heartaches, and regrets, slowly piecing together the mosaic of who they had been and who they wished to become. One night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow, they gathered in a circle to discuss what lay ahead. "We must be prepared to face the darker aspects of ourselves," the farmer reminded them, his tone serious. The leader took a deep breath, the weight of his hesitation swirling into clarity. "I came here to steal to get rich quick." Slowly, the group echoed their thoughts, each expressing newfound insights, reflecting on their desires and the motivations that had driven their past actions. The barn became their sanctuary, a place of healing and understanding. Amidst the lull of evening, the farmer watched with a knowing smile, seeing them evolve before his eyes. They weren't just marauders anymore. They were seekers of truth, guardians of ancient knowledge ready to embrace their destinies. Yet, as their final lessons drew to a close, he seized a moment of severity. "There comes a time when you must decide, take what you've learned and leave this place, bearing the weight of knowledge, or turn it into something greater." The night thickened with tension, the air alive with expectant energy. They faced a dilemma: now stay in the safety of the barn or emerge into the world with new identities. "I say we take what we've learned and make something of it," the leader proposed, resolve anchoring his voice. "Not as thieves, but as protectors of the knowledge we've gained." Others murmured their agreement, excitement rippling through them like a gust of wind. They had come to this barn as strangers driven by greed, but they were leaving as a family ready to embrace their futures as agents of change. As the sun rose, they stepped into the dawning light, the barn behind them now humming with life and magic. They had transformed into something far more powerful than marauders. They had become a force for good. The farmer stood in the barn's doorway, looking out onto the horizon with a sense of pride. "Remember, treasures are not always what you think they are." With that, the marauders set off down the path, lighter than they had ever felt, carrying with them the weight of wisdom, a treasure more precious than gold. They had ventured into the shadows and emerged shining, ready to illuminate the world around them. And the old barn stood silent but vibrant behind them, knowing it had birthed a new beginning, holding a space where secrets had transformed into legacies, a sanctuary for those brave enough to seek truth. Under the pale glow of the moon, a chill ran through the air, wrapping the night in an eerie silence. Shadows danced among the long grasses that swayed in the wind, and the silhouette of an old barn loomed in the distance like a ghost whispering secrets of forgotten times. A group of marauders crept along the edge of the field, their hearts beating with a mixture of excitement and fear, driven by the promise of something hidden just beyond reach. Whispered one of them, glancing back toward the darkened farmhouse that seemed to watch over its property like an ancient guardian. The leader, a tall figure with an infectious smile, smirked confidently. "Come on. It's just a barn. They say there's treasure hidden inside." He kept pushing forward, and the others followed, their curiosity outweighing their apprehensions. They approached the barn, its weathered wood darkened by years of exposure to the elements. In the quiet of the night, the old doors creaked open at the slightest touch, revealing a dimly lit interior cloaked in shadows. Inside, the air was thick with the musty smell of hay and forgotten memories. Against the walls were scattered relics of a life long past, rusty tools and faded photos that whispered stories from another time. A beam of moonlight broke through a crack in the wall, illuminating a path of shattered dreams and untold secrets. "Look at all this junk," scoffed one marauder, rummaging through an old wheelbarrow. But their leader remained unfazed, eyes gleaming with determination. "Don't lose hope yet." As if summoned by his words, his flashlight flicked across the far corner, where something glinted in the sparse light. He shouted, excitement coursing through him as he dashed forward, stumbling upon a metal door sunken into the barn's floor. It was covered in dirt and grime, nearly invisible amid the chaos of the barn. The others rushed to his side, hands trembling with the anticipation of discovery. One of them asked, skepticism mingling with hope. "Only one way to find out," the leader replied, pushing the door open with a strong shove. It creaked harshly, revealing a narrow staircase that spiraled down into darkness, the air feeling cooler as they peered into the abyss. Nervousness rippled through the group as they hesitated, backs pressed against the rough walls. Someone whispered, glancing back up the stairs. The leader looked back at them, eyes gleaming. "What's the worst that can happen? Treasure doesn't just sit out in the open." With spirits bolstered, they descended the staircase, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the thin air. The darkness thickened around them, swallowing their nervousness and amplifying their curiosity. When they reached the bottom, the smell of damp earth and decay wrapped around them, a pungent reminder of the secrets buried in the shadows. They emerged in a small room, dimly lit by flickering lanterns that cast ghostly shadows on the walls. Shelves lined with jars filled with strange substances surrounded them, green herbs, amber liquids, and peculiar powders that sparkled with mystery. One of them asked, apprehensive yet intrigued. As they approached the shelves, they noticed an array of worn books and scrolls piled haphazardly on a table in the center of the room. The leader swept a hand over the table, sending dust swirling into the air. "These look ancient." Flipping through a fragile scroll, the autumnal tones of the parchment felt warm against his fingertips. Symbols danced across the page, cryptic in their design but hinting at something powerful. Another marauder whispered, peering at the symbols as if they might unveil unearthly wonders. The idea sent shivers of excitement down their spines, but their moment of wonder was abruptly shattered. A loud creak from above sent jolts of panic coursing through them. The farmhouse door had swung open, and footsteps echoed through the quiet barn like thunder. The leader hissed, urgency punctuating his tone. They stumbled to the shelves, fighting to contain their escalating fear as they pressed against the cold walls. The door swung open, and a figure stepped into the room, a tall, weathered man with wild hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. The farmer was imposing, his presence filling the space and forcing the marauders into silence. He called, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to resonate with the very walls around them. The marauders clutched their breaths, hearts drumming in their ears. "Come out. I know you're here," the farmer said, his gaze sweeping over the room until it landed upon a trembling marauder hiding behind a shelf. The young man stammered, a flush of fear spreading across his face. "We were just looking for—" The farmer raised an eyebrow, amusement intertwining with his suspicion. The leader pleaded, stepping out into the light, determined to save his friends from immediate peril. "Stories are just stories," the farmer replied, crossing his arms. They said in unison, riveted by the intensity of his gaze. "The truth is, what lies beneath this barn is not just wealth," the farmer said, his voice lower now, almost conspiratorial. "It's knowledge of ancient practices, hidden ingredients, and the balance of nature. It can heal, but it can also harm." One of the marauders scoffed, shaking his head. "Magic ingredients?" The farmer regarded him with a piercing stare. "I've seen many come seeking power only to lose themselves in the process. With great knowledge comes great responsibility." The room grew tense as the marauders exchanged glances, uncertainty pooling in their eyes. They had come for treasure, not responsibility. But the farmer's words struck a deeper chord, resonating with a yearning they hadn't realized was there. The leader asked, determination shifting the tone. The farmer's expression softened as if he were weighing their sincerity. "If you seek it truly, then step forward, but know that the path is fraught with trials." With newfound resolve, the leader nodded. The farmer stepped back, motioning for them to enter fully into the room. The marauders stood tall, no longer just petty thieves but warriors ready to confront the deeper aspects of their own natures. With each lesson, they uncovered the secrets stored within those jars and scrolls, blending ancient herbs and crafting potions that sparked with life. Weeks passed in an intoxicating whirl of discovery. They learned to brew healing remedies and concoct mixtures that could quell pain or revive spirits. Each session with the farmer deepened their understanding, forging bonds of camaraderie that had once felt impossible. But their transformation didn't come without challenges. They faced failures, potions gone wrong, mixtures that fizzled and exploded. Each setback tested their resolve, unraveling doubts they carried from their past. Every failure is a stepping stone, the farmer taught them, guiding their hands through the process. Through understanding what doesn't work, you'll get closer to what does. With every potion crafted, with every story shared around the flickering lantern light, the Marauders shed their old identities. They revealed the scars they wore, the ambitions that had driven them to a life of crime, and the aching desire for something more. One evening, as the sun dipped and painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, they gathered in a circle. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation as they prepared to share their transformations. "I came here wanting to take," one marauder spoke, voice steady now. "And I wanted wealth," another added, crossing her legs beneath her. The group nodded, feelings of understanding weaving tightly around them like a warm embrace. They had become closer than family, unified in purpose and intention. "Remember," the farmer said, his blue eyes reflecting the weight of wisdom, "true power lies not only in knowledge but in understanding each other and the world around you." As their final lessons approached, the weight of responsibility settled upon each of them. They had to decide what to do with their newfound understanding. "I don't want to leave this behind," one whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Me too," another chimed in, eyes alight with excitement. With attention undivided, the Marauders discussed their dreams around the warmth of flickering candles. They envisioned a path that went beyond mere survival, a path leading to healing communities that had once seemed out of reach. The farmer watched as they took charge of their destinies, noticing how they now spoke with confidence, no longer intimidated by the weight of knowledge. On their final night, the barn felt alive, humming with energy pulsating in the air. The Marauders gathered around the old table, laden with jars of herbs they had carefully crafted over their journey. The farmer raised a glass of infused tea, its aromas rich and intoxicating. "To new beginnings," he declared. The Marauders echoed his toast, eyes flashing with determination. They were ready to step into the world as protectors of knowledge, not takers of greed. As dawn broke, painting the sky in strokes of gold, they moved toward the barn door one last time. The sun's rays dappled their faces, a promise flickering in the air. The farmer stood at the entrance, a proud smile gracing his face. "Remember," he called out, voice deep and resonant, "what you take from here isn't just knowledge but a chance to change the fabric of your lives and those around you." With every step taken beyond the confines of the barn, the Marauders left behind the shadows of who they had been and embraced the vibrant, luminous future that awaited them. They were no longer a group of thieves. They were custodians of a legacy, a force for healing in a world that desperately needed it. As they walked far into the horizon, the old barn stood silent behind them. A sanctuary of secrets, it would always remember this moment, the birth of transformation and a promise of hope. Once thought to be a mere building, it had become a beacon of potential, where Marauders transformed into light bearers for a brighter tomorrow. In the dead of night, when shadows stretched long and the wind whispered secrets, a group of Marauders crept toward a dimly lit barn at the edge of a desolate field. The moon hung high, a cold eye watching them as they stole through the tall grass. They believed they were on the brink of something extraordinary. Tales of buried treasure were floating around the nearby taverns like wildfire. The worn barn had become the stuff of legends, said to contain riches that could change their lives. One of them, a nervous young man named Finn, whispered, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Of course we are," replied Kale, the leader, his voice dripping with bravado. He pushed open the heavy barn doors, which groaned loudly, protesting their entry. The inside was dim, its shadows laced with dust motes that danced in the beams of their flashlights. The air felt thick, as if every untouched piece of equipment, axes, wooden plows, a forgotten cart, was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. "Look at this place," muttered Jace, leaning over an ancient horse saddle. Kale waved a dismissive hand. Don't be ridiculous. There's treasure here, I can feel it. They fanned out cautiously, scanning the corners, pushing aside old crates and barrels like impatient children searching for hidden Easter eggs. But the deeper they searched, the less hope they felt. Just when despair was starting to creep in, Finn stumbled upon a hidden door set into the floor, half covered by hay. "Guys!" Finn exclaimed, excitement igniting in his voice. The group gathered around, staring at the door with wide, eager eyes. Kale knelt down, brushing the debris away. "This has to go somewhere." With all his strength, he pulled the door open. It creaked ominously, revealing a stairway that spiraled down into darkness, swallowing their flashlights' beams. Finn's voice shook as he caught a glimpse of shadows shifting on the walls below. "Absolutely." Kale responded, adrenaline pumping through him. Rallying his courage, he started down the stairs, the others reluctantly following. The air felt cooler and more oppressive as they descended, each creak of the wood beneath their feet echoing their rising anxiety. The darkness around felt alive, heavy with the weight of secrets waiting to be revealed. They reached the bottom, stepping into a small room lit by flickering candles that cast eerie shadows among the jars lining the walls. The contents of the jars were unlike anything they had ever seen: vibrant liquids, dried herbs, and odd-looking creatures preserved in glass. Whispered Jace, incredulity coloring his voice. "More like a witch's workshop," Kale grinned, his bravado returning. "But look at those." Their eyes darted around the room, and that's when they noticed it, a collection of old, leather-bound books stacked haphazardly in the corner. One book sat atop the pile, beckoning them to discover its secrets. Kale reached out and picked it up. Dust clouded around him as he opened it to reveal pages filled with intricate diagrams and strange symbols. He scanned the words, brow furrowing. "This is?" Finn asked, leaning in closer but stopping short, the pages starting to swirl in his mind. "Something about alchemy," Kale muttered, his curiosity igniting. "Transformations, properties of plants. It looks like a recipe book for potions." Suddenly, the barn door slammed shut, cutting through the hushed excitement. The group froze, eyes wide. The heavy thud felt like a hammer striking the anvil of their fear. A gruff voice echoed, sending chills down their spines. From the shadows emerged the farmer, a tall man with a weathered face and piercing eyes full of mystery. He carried an air of authority that filled the room. With each step, the echo of his boots resonated against the walls. He demanded, voice low and steady. Caught between fear and disbelief, the Marauders scrambled to hide, pressing themselves against the walls, shadows enveloping them. The farmer persisted, staring directly into the darkness where they huddled like frightened animals. Finally, Kale emerged, hands half raised in mock surrender. "We didn't mean any harm, we just—" A faint smirk curled at the corners of the farmer's mouth. "You wanted to see, is that what you call it, rummaging through my things?" "We heard stories," Finn stammered, unable to hold back the truth any longer. The farmer's eyes glinted, amusement dancing in the depths. "What you seek is not what you think. In this barn lies much more than simple riches." A thick silence fell over the room, the air heavy with unspoken tension. The Marauders shifted, realizing they were not just thieves in search of treasure but now players in a much larger game. Jace asked, his skepticism beginning to fade. The farmer stepped closer, his presence intoxicatingly powerful. "What you see here is ancient knowledge, kept alive through generations. This is the art of transformation, not just of substances but of lives." Finn swallowed hard, intrigued yet anxious. "Potions, remedies, alchemy, and the delicate balance between the natural and supernatural," the farmer explained, his voice steady and captivating. "To wield such power, you must understand its essence." Jace asked, the weight of curiosity anchoring his voice. "Those who seek power without understanding often lose themselves," the farmer replied matter-of-factly. "They become consumed by their desires, blinded to the truth that lurks in the shadows." They exchanged uncertain glances, doubt gnawed at the corners of their minds like a hungry wolf. They had come for wealth but now felt something more profound and unsettling welling up inside them. We want to learn," Kale finally said, his voice steady but not without fear. The farmer regarded them intently as if weighing their souls. Finally he nodded, a glimmer of approval shining in his eyes. "Then we will begin. But know this, the path ahead will be fraught with challenges." As the days turned into weeks, the marauders transformed. Under the farmer's guidance, they began to learn the delicate art of herbs and potions. They experimented, crafting oils and salves, each new concoction offering lessons in patience and concentration. Each night was filled with fiery hope as they gathered around tables strewn with ingredients discussing their dreams, ambitions, pain, and pasts openly sharing the stories they had once hidden in darkness. For the first time, they felt not like brigands stealing fortunes, but rather like seekers weaving the fabric of their fates. However, their journey was not without peril. Each potion held the potential for disaster. Some mixtures exploded, others fizzled away to nothing. The failures often led to disheartening nights of self-doubt, but with every misstep the farmer reminded them, embrace each failure. Groaned one marauder after a particularly volatile experiment. Kale shot him a sharp look. No, it's not. We're learning more about ourselves than we ever thought possible. Through their trials and errors, they began to unravel their own demons. They confronted choices that had led them to a life of crime, peeling away layers of bravado and uncovering vulnerability. The barn became not just a place of learning, but a sanctuary of healing. One night, as they sat around a flickering lantern in a circle, Jace spoke up, voice heavy with emotion. I never thought I'd share this, but I grew up feeling invisible. My parents didn't care about me, and I thought that living for myself was the only way to find worth. Finn nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. I spent years running away from my past, thinking if I had money I'd be happy. But this is happiness. The farmer listened intently, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. You see the power in vulnerability now. As the full moon rose high in the sky, casting silver rays into the barn, the marauders faced their final test. The farmer led them to the back of the room, where shelves lined with jars glimmered like stars, each filled with essences waiting to unlock their potential. Tonight, you will create your own potions, drawing from what you've learned, he declared, voice resonating with authority. But remember, combination has power. Under the watchful eye of the farmer, the marauders set to work, fervently combining ingredients. Their hands moved with both fear and confidence, breaths held tight as they created concoctions that bubbled and popped, each reaction laden with the weight of their choices. As the final mixture simmered, something unexpected began to take shape. A slow realization crept into their hearts. The true potion was not just a blend of herbs, but a reunion with their own fragmented identities. When the clock struck midnight, the farmer called them to gather. The potions you've created reflect not just the ingredients but the journeys you've taken. Now drink. They raised their jars high, glimmers of doubt replaced by resolve. With shared glances, they swallowed the potions that had come to symbolize their transformation. In that moment, the air thickened, crackling with an energy that felt alive. Memories flooded their minds, echoes of their past intertwined with visions of what lay ahead. As they closed their eyes, they glimpsed the shadows that had once shrouded them dissipating into the light. When they opened their eyes, something had shifted. There was clarity, a bond they could feel deeply within themselves and with each other. They had faced their fears and emerged stronger, ready to take on the world. The farmer nodded in approval, witnessing the metamorphosis. You have chosen the path of understanding. Keep this knowledge close. As the dawn broke over the horizon, a golden light spilled through the barn doors, bathing them in warmth. The marauders stepped outside, feeling a weight lift from their shoulders. The burdens they'd once carried like stones now transformed into feathers. Together, they walked away from the barn that had shifted everything. No longer were they marauders seeking treasure. They had become champions of knowledge, prepared to share their newfound wisdom with the world. They understood the greater truth. True wealth was found not in what one took, but in what one gave. And as they turned to look back at the old barn, now bathed in the dawn's first light, they knew it stood as a testament to their journey, a place where they had been transformed from shadows into light, from lost souls to empowered beings ready to write the next chapter of their lives. The farmer waved from the doorway, a guardian of secrets, watching proudly as the dawn of a new beginning unfolded before them. The moon hung like a watchful eye, casting shadows that danced and flickered across the quiet countryside. Beneath its pale light, a group of marauders crept through the tall grass, hearts pounding with equal parts excitement and trepidation. They had heard the stories whispered in the dark corners of taverns, tales of treasure buried deep within an old, abandoned barn on the outskirts of town. Most dismissed it as local folklore, but for this crew, it was a chance at glory. Whispered Finn, glancing nervously over his shoulder. The old farmhouse loomed behind them, dark and silent, like a sleeping giant. Kale, the leader, shrugged off Finn's apprehension. "Of course it is," he said confidently. "You think anyone just leaves a fortune sitting in plain sight?" The thrill of adventure surged through him, and he pushed open the creaky barn door, the sound echoing like a warning. The interior was dimly lit, filled with the scent of dust and decaying wood, the air cool and heavy. Despite its age, the barn felt alive, as if it held stories from years gone by. Kale stepped inside, the beams of their flashlights illuminating rusted tools and forgotten machinery strewn about like discarded dreams. "Look at all this junk," Finn remarked, his enthusiasm waning as he pushed aside an old saddle that had clearly seen better days. "Don't be so quick to judge," Kale said, scanning the room. As they fanned out, the floorboards creaked under their weight, the sound resonating in the oppressive silence. Finn's heart raced as he felt the shadows press in around him, each movement amplifying his anxiety. Just when he thought all hope was lost, Jace called out, excitement dripping from his voice. "Guys!" He had stumbled upon an old chest, half buried beneath an avalanche of hay. They gathered around, anticipation bubbling within them. Kale knelt down, wrestling the chest out from its resting place. "This has to be it," he exclaimed, breathless with possibility. With a strong pull, the lid creaked open, revealing a trove of dusty letters and trivial baubles, an old compass, a faded photograph, a frayed piece of parchment. Disappointment washed over them like cold water. "They could have at least left us gold," muttered Finn, disappointment etched across his face. But Kale wasn't ready to give up just yet. "There's got to be something more in here," he insisted, eyes shining with determination. He dug deeper into the chest, shoving aside the useless trinkets until his fingers brushed against something solid. Pulling it out, he revealed a small key, ornate and glinting faintly in the dim light. Kale shouted, holding it aloft like a trophy. At that moment the barn door slammed shut, rattling the very foundations of their resolve. The sound echoed like thunder and the group froze, hearts pounding in unison. Finn's voice trembled with fear, glancing at the door as if expecting a ghost to emerge. "Must be the wind," Jace said, though even he didn't seem convinced. Kale's bravado wavered, but he forced himself to step closer to the door. "Hello," he called out, his voice firm yet shaky. Suddenly, the old barn was illuminated by the sudden flare of a lantern, casting orange shadows across the room. The flickering light revealed an imposing figure standing in the doorway, a farmer, tall and rugged, with a wild beard and eyes that gleamed with an intensity that could pierce through flesh. He demanded, his voice deep and gravelly, vibrating through the air like an earthquake. Caught between panic and disbelief, the marauders scrambled back, the hunter suddenly becoming the hunted. We didn't mean to intrude," Kale stammered, realizing the precarious situation. Farmer stepped inside, the atmosphere growing heavy with his presence. Finn fought to maintain eye contact. "Just rumors of valuables." The farmer studied them, his gaze sharp and unyielding. "Valuable? You think treasure lies in things. What you seek is not what it appears." Jace echoed, his voice barely more than a whisper. The farmer lifted the lantern higher, casting light over jars containing odd ingredients, dried herbs and dusty tomes bursting with handwriting that looked ancient and powerful. "These are not mere curiosities. They hold power beyond your reckoning." Finn's throat felt dry, curiosity mingled with the remnants of fear. The farmer's lips curled, a dangerous smile breaking across his face. Those who sought wealth and power without preparation often found only despair. Each marauder exchanged glances, the air thick with anxiety. They hadn't planned to confront this. They had come to steal, not to learn. Kale stepped forward, his voice stronger now. The farmer's expression softened, curiosity shimmering in his piercing gaze. "If you wish to learn, you must first decide if you are ready for the truth." With a collective breath, they faced one another, tentative glances at first, then nods of mutual determination. "Let's do it," Jace said, the spark of adventure once again igniting in his eyes. The farmer took a step back, allowing them room to enter this realm of mysteries. Then let's begin. The atmosphere in the barn shifted. There was a palpable energy, almost electric, as they gathered around the farmer. He motioned them closer to a sturdy table lined with jars and scrolls. "Tonight we'll begin with the herbs," he said, his voice rich with wisdom. "Each one tells a story of its own. Learn their properties." The hours passed in a whirlwind of discovery. The Marauders leaned over the table, mixing ingredients in jars, carefully measuring and listening to the farmer's instructions. Each potion bubbled with potential and risk, enticing their curiosity even further. "Chamomile can heal," the farmer explained, gesturing toward a delicate flower. "But too much can lead to drowsiness." As the evening wore on, their initial fears faded away, replaced by wonder and intrigue. They were no longer simply marauders. They were novice alchemists, passionately experimenting with nature's raw gifts. But with every potion they brewed, they ventured deeper into the unknown. They learned to harness energy, to respect the world around them, but they also understood they were walking a fine line. Still, not everything was smooth sailing. One night, amidst bubbling mixtures and swirling aromas, Finn mistakenly combined two volatile ingredients. A loud pop sent a cloud of smoke billowing into the room and chaos erupted. "Finn!" Jace shouted, coughing on the acrid fumes as the room filled with swirling gray. Panic set in, blinding their thoughts. Kale yelled, his heart racing as they scrambled for the door, confusion mixing with fear. But amidst the chaos, something shifted. The farmer stood tall, unfazed by the turmoil. With a swift motion, he clasped a jar from the shelf and hurled it into the center of the chaos. A brilliant flash illuminated the room, and the smoke dissipated, leaving the group breathless. "Control," the farmer said firmly, his voice cutting through the shock. When the dust settled, fear and humility washed over Finn like a cold wave. He could feel the weight of their actions pressing into his chest. "I'm sorry," he whispered, shame flooding his voice. "Mistakes are lessons if you choose to view them as such," the farmer replied, a hint of compassion breaking through his stern exterior. The group took a moment to breathe, realizing that every potion held power, yes, but each action they took also demanded respect for the essence of the world around them. As days turned to weeks, their confidence grew, tempered by the lessons learned through trial and error. They forged deeper connections, sharing more of themselves than they ever had before. The barn transformed from a hidden hoard of secrets into a sacred ground of transformation and understanding. But as the sun dipped below the horizon one fateful evening, casting golden light through the barn's cracks, the atmosphere shifted. A storm was brewing. Something dark lurked in the shadows. "Tonight I'll teach you about the most powerful potion of all," the farmer announced, and seriousness laced his tone. Jace asked, leaning forward, curiosity bubbling. "It grants the ability to glimpse the future, but it comes with a price." Finn felt a pang of fear twist inside him. He ventured, anxiety gripping his heart. The farmer retrieved a small vial filled with shimmering liquid. "This potion requires a rare flower, one that blooms only once a year, deep within the woods beyond the barn." A sense of unease settled over the group. The woods were known to be fraught with danger, filled with illusions meant to mislead wanderers. Most stayed away, whispering tales of bizarre occurrences that sent chills down the spines of even the boldest souls. "I don't know," Finn said, hesitating. Kale's eyes sparked with resolve. "We came this far. We cannot turn back now." With reluctant agreement, the group set out at the break of dawn, forging into the heart of the woods, shadows swirling around them, stretching like tendrils trying to wrap them in darkness. The trees towered overhead, twisting and tangling, creating a labyrinth that felt enchanted, yet perilous. As they ventured deeper, the air thickened and Finn's stomach churned with unease. Each rustle in the brush seemed amplified, every snap of a twig echoing their fears. "Keep moving," Kale urged, determination in his voice, but even he felt the dread creeping in. Suddenly they paused as the trees parted, revealing a glade bathed in silver light. In the center stood a magnificent flower, glowing softly, its petals shimmering like diamonds. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Jace pointed, disbelief washing over him. They approached cautiously, wonder flooding their hearts. But just as they reached for it, a figure stepped out from behind the trees, an ethereal being cloaked in shadow. Its presence exuded an ancient power that sent shivers roaring down their spines. It hissed, voice like wind through dry leaves. The marauders froze, terror knotting in their chests. They had crossed a line into a world governed by rules they didn't understand. Kale stepped forward, trying to reclaim his bravery. "We seek the flower." The figure laughed, a sound that echoed like thunder in the clearing. "Knowledge comes with a price." The air crackled with tension, and in that moment the marauders stood at a crossroads, a choice that could alter their fates. Fear intermingled with exhilaration, and they realized their journey was about to take a turn they could never have anticipated. Kale swallowed hard, searching for the courage within. "Yes, we'll pay whatever price it takes," he declared. As the words left his mouth, lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the being's face for just a moment, and in that fraught instant they saw the truth. The weight of their choice hung thick in the air, and only time would reveal the consequences of their actions. With hearts pounding, the marauders stood on the precipice of their fate, the world around them shifting beneath the branches, where shadows danced in anticipation of what lay ahead. All they knew in that moment was that the next step could shatter everything they had ever dreamed, or grant them unimaginable power.